This is Canvas UI, an open source library of tasteful HTML and Canvas and WebGL components, all framework agnostic and installable with shadcn, so you own the code. This has some of the coolest components and effects that I've seen in a while, and I just wanted to share that. And I'm also super excited to see HTML and Canvas actually getting used, as it could seriously make the future of the web actually fun, and it also has a cool use case that I think a lot of people look over. Let's check it out. So here on that documentation, you can find all of the 33 components this library currently has, and I'll just start out with the ASCII object, which is the first one that comes up. You can see it's this really cool rubber duck here, but it's built out of ASCII objects, but it still maintains that 3D look, and we can pan this in 3D as well. Now, installing this, as I said, is super simple. You can literally just use the shadcn CLI, and this will add the code to your code base, so you can go in there later and ask Claude or something to change the model for you, and the effect should just work. Also install the dependencies for you like Three.js, which this component uses, and that's something important to know about this library. It's sort of split into two components. First, we have the ones that use WebGL and Three.js, like this one, that should work on most modern browsers as they support those technologies, but then we also have the ones that use HTML and Canvas, like this bend one. You can see as I scroll here, the HTML is actually curving around the page, and this is an effect that can only be achieved with HTML and Canvas, which is actually an experimental browser capability which requires a Chrome feature flag to be enabled. But before I explain what HTML in Canvas is, one really cool thing to know about these effects is they don't just break on uncompatible browsers. They actually have fallbacks. So I switch over to Firefox here, which doesn't support HTML and Canvas and doesn't have the feature flag, and you can see that the bend one here is just a normal web page now. It doesn't actually break the web page if I don't have HTML in Canvas enabled, which is super nice. But we also have some effects like this blaze one here. You can see down at the bottom, it is working. We do have a blaze effect, but this looks much cooler in HTML and Canvas. So now that I switch back to a version of Chrome that does have that feature flag enabled, you can see we get this really cool heat distortion effect down the bottom, where it's actually wobbling that HTML, and it's just a really cool subtle effect. Another good example of this is this bubble effect, which I'm currently using in HTML and Canvas. You can see we get a really cool distortion effect, and it almost looks like liquid glass when I hover this over the web page. But if I switch this out and go over to Firefox, you can see that it just looks like a normal bubble. We don't get that same distortion of the underlying HTML, since we can't, as we're not using HTML in Canvas. I just find it quite nice that this library actually considered some fallbacks when the effect doesn't work, instead of completely breaking the web page. But now let's talk about what HTML in Canvas actually is, because I've mentioned it quite a lot already. While I explain this, I'm going to show some of the components on the side here, and at the end, I'm also going to show you my 5 favorite components, so stick around to see that. The first thing to know is I've actually done a video on HTML in Canvas before, so if you want a detailed look, go ahead and watch that video after this, and subscribe to stay up to date with AI and software development. But to give you a quick recap, normally if you want a GPU effect over your content on the web, you have 2 options. Option 1 is that you rebuild your content inside of a canvas, so now you're drawing your own text and writing your own layout engine, and you can't use components like select, and that means accessibility, search, translation, find on page, all of that completely breaks. This is why companies like Figma had to build a browser inside of a browser, and why Google Docs runs its own layout engine. Option 2 is that you essentially screenshot your DOM and draw a picture, and that's what a library like HTML to Canvas does, and it's essentially just a re-implementation of DOM and CSS rendering inside of a canvas, but it doesn't support everything. So both of those options aren't so great and have a lot of trade-offs, and this is what HTML and Canvas is trying to fix. It's currently a WICG proposal, but it adds a method called drawElementImage, and that takes a real DOM element and draws it inside of your canvas. It also has a method called textElementImage2D for WebGL and copyElementImageToTexture for WebGPU, so you can actually pull a live DOM element in as a texture to a 3D scene. The key to all of it though is that the HTML element stays as a real element. It stays completely in the accessibility tree, it stays selectable, and when it updates, the canvas updates as well. The real TLDR of HTML and Canvas is just think of it as shaders for HTML or a reincarnation of Flash. If you're still a little bit confused, as I said, go ahead and watch my deep dive video, but now let's get on to my 5 favorite components from this library. The first one is this decrypt reveal component. I just think it's a super cool effect how it can actually take the underlying component and then make it ASCII scrambled like this, and as you hover over, it reveals what the actual component is. I can actually see using this when you have a one-time secret pop-up, you have that one time to copy it. You could have a cool effect like this, so when they hover over it, they can copy the key underneath and then go away. I just think that'd be a really cool place to use this effect. The second component is this flame wrap one. I just think it adds a really cool border effect. And we also have that same heat distortion that we saw on the flame effect. and you can see that it just adds a really nice border around these elements, and I could see using this when you have a destructive command. Maybe like where delete repo is on GitHub. I know it has a red button, but imagine surrounding that in a red flame. That would let users know that it's extra destructive. The third effect is this pill one here, and I probably wouldn't use this one in practice as it's unclear where it actually is. You can see as I hover over to the side here, it peels away and reveals that sidebar like a page is being peeled back. Now, as I said, I probably wouldn't use that in practice as it's unclear where the sidebar actually is, but I just think it's a super cool demo of how to use HTML in Canvas. The same goes for effect number 4, which is ripple here. You can see the web page looks completely normal for now, but as I click about, you can see it adds a really nice water ripple over the entire HTML. And again, I just think this is a cool showcase of HTML in Canvas, modifying the actual HTML itself and adding a shader-like effect on top. I'm not too sure where I'd use this in practice, but I can imagine some fancy marketing sites would love this effect. They'd also love effect number 5, which is this shatter one, which as you can see, as I move my mouse around, it's shattering the actual underlying HTML on the web page into 3D glass shards. And again, all of these I just think are such a cool showcase of what HTML and Canvas can do, and I really hope that it gets implemented into modern browsers one day. So those are just a few of my favorite effects and components from this library, but now I want to show you a use case that you can do today that I don't think enough people know about. Now, it is a little bit niche, but Canvas UI and HTML in Canvas are super cool to use with tools like Remotion and Hyperframes to actually add effects to your videos that have been generated with code. Both of them already support this. So let's say I take the VHS effect from Canvas UI and I ask Claude here with Hyperframes to add this effect to my webcam video that I recorded earlier. Once this is complete, you can see this is the final product. So I'm now coding in video effects and editing this video as I go. I could also ask Claude to switch this to the rain effect, and it does so with ease, or I could ask Claude to add in a few glitches here and there, and these are all effects from the Canvas UI library. As someone who is a better developer than an editor, this is just a super cool niche use case for me that I just had to share with you guys. So that is Canvas UI. Would I use this? Well, some of it, yes. The WebGL overlay effects, the ones that work everywhere, those I'd happily ship tomorrow on a landing page or a marketing site. And the HTML and Canvas ones, I'd probably only stick to demo sites for now, as it's cool to show off what could come in the future with HTML in Canvas. But I could also use them today for those video effects which I showed, which is a really cool use case. What do you think? Do you find this library cool? Do you have any other cool libraries? Let me know in the comments down below, or there, subscribe, and as always, see you in the next one.